My name is Reagan Foster. On the night my brother toasted his new wife, my father lifted his glass and made me the punchline. Everyone turned to watch him. We were in a church hall strung with fairy lights. Metal chairs scraped, forks tapped. Dad didn't need a microphone. He had the coach's voice that fills a room. He saluted the couple with 9 polite words, then pivoted, smiling toward me like a man about to sink a putt he's bragged about all week. "This one," he said, tilting his glass. Bless her heart, the biggest screw-up in the family. Laughter rolled the way thunder moves over a field, quick, eager, waiting to split something open. My mother's napkin paused mid-air. My sister looked down at her bouquet. I held my wine by the stem and let the chill thread through my fingers. Years of learning when not to speak sat me upright in the folding chair. I wasn't going to bleed for him tonight. Condensation on his glass ran a thin track across the cornflower print. My brother's friends slapped the table. A stranger near the sheet cake stopped halfway to his seat. He wore dress whites that catch light like truth. He didn't look at my father. He looked at me. The room shifted the way air changes before rain, somewhere. A kid giggled and then swallowed it. Dad rolled into the old stories about me tripping hurdles and never finishing strong. People smiled because they'd been taught to. The man in whites cleared his throat. A low, certain sound that didn't ask permission. "Wait," he said, eyes steady on mine. "Isn't she?" I set my glass down so it wouldn't shake. The hall held its breath. I held mine a heartbeat longer, because timing can be mercy and a blade. I grew up in a town that clung to Friday night lights like gospel. The high school football field doubled as a map of belonging. My brother, Tyler, carved his name into those bleachers with touchdowns and newspaper clippings. My sister, Corinne, followed with a GPA that teachers held up like scripture. And me, I was the one who ran track for a season, stumbled over the first hurdle, and never lived it down. Dad loved telling that story. At cookouts, in the church fellowship hall, even once during a funeral potluck. She popped right back up, finished dead last, our very own comeback queen. He'd laugh, and everyone else would too, because it was easier than not. I laughed too, back then. At 13, you learn fast that smiling with the crowd keeps the spotlight from burning. But at night, I'd stare at the ceiling fan in my room and whisper the same thing over and over like prayer or threat. I won't be the joke forever. I tried everything. Volleyball, debate club, even theater. I never stood out, not in the way my father measured worth. He clapped out of duty at my chorus recital, then walked out early for a quick beer with one of Tyler's coaches. By 15, I stopped inviting him. Mom would still come, purse folded neatly in her lap, eyes flickering with apology she never voiced. One night, I brought home a science project I was proud of: wires, tiny bulbs lighting in sequence. I waited at the kitchen counter while he watched the evening sports report. When I finally spoke, he glanced at the board, tapped it with one finger, and said, "Not bad, but you'll never outshine your brother's trophy shelf." That night, I tucked the project into the trash bin behind our garage and went for a run in the dark. I didn't stop until my lungs begged for mercy. After that, I stopped trying to impress him, but I didn't stop trying. I woke earlier, ran farther, pushed my body until it shook, and in the quiet just before dawn, I began reading war history, naval strategy, stories of women who had commanded ships and carried weight without applause. No one knew it yet, but I was starting to build something, not to show off, not for revenge, but to stand on someday, and not flinch. The day I turned 16, I didn't have a party, no cake, no candles, no half-hearted singing, just a dinner at the kitchen table, me, Mom, and the distant thud of a football game Dad had turned up loud in the living room. Tyler had a scrimmage the next day. Corinne had just gotten into Purdue early. I cleared the dishes myself while Mom pretended not to notice the lump in my throat. That night, I didn't cry. I pulled on a hoodie, tied my laces tight, and ran until the whole neighborhood blurred into breath and blacktop. The moon was high when I stopped, hands on my knees, ribs aching, somewhere between mile 5 and mile 6. I made a vow not out loud, not even to God, just inward, sharp and silent, like flint sparking stone. I will never let him define me again. I stopped waiting for his approval after that. At school, I walked with my head higher, not because I felt special, far from it, but because I knew what it would cost me to keep shrinking. I kept running, kept reading, and one day, in the back corner of the library, I found a book about Admiral Michelle Howard, the first woman to command a U.S. Navy ship in combat. I read it cover to cover in one sitting, knees folded beneath me, fingers tightening with every page. The next morning, I started researching the Navy, not just the enlistment path, but everything: structure, ranks, history. I mapped out how long it would take, what kind of training I'd need, where I could go if I earned it. I didn't tell a soul, not even Mom, especially not Dad. If he knew, he'd laugh. He'd say something like, "The Navy? You can't even keep your room clean, Reagan." And maybe he'd be right, in the narrow way he measured strength. But I wasn't planning to prove him wrong with words. I was planning to disappear quietly into a world he'd never understand and come back so changed. He wouldn't recognize the girl he used to talk over. That girl would be forged in silence. And silence, I was learning, could be power. The first morning of boot camp, we were yanked from sleep at 0500 by a whistle that felt like it had teeth. My scalp still tingled from the buzz cut, and my bunkmate was already crying before her boots hit the floor. But I moved fast. I'd been ready for this. I'd been training for it since I was 16, even if no one else knew. Drill instructors didn't care where you came from. They didn't care if your dad thought you were worthless or if you graduated top of your class. They cared about effort, grit, how many times you'd get back up after they knocked you down literally and otherwise. That was the playing field I'd waited for my whole life. Push-ups on concrete until my elbows shook. Marches in the rain with gear that soaked through to the bone. Scrubbing floors until my knuckles cracked. And through it all, his voice in my head. "You'll never make it. You never finish anything." Except now, I wasn't trying to finish for him. I was finishing for me. When I got my first deployment orders, I didn't hesitate. The ink on the paper felt like a door unlocking. I was sent to Bahrain, then to the South China Sea, later, Iraq. I wasn't infantry, but war doesn't care what your job title is. Once, I held pressure on a young Marine's thigh while blood soaked through both our uniforms. The whole left side of my body went numb from fear. But I didn't flinch. He survived. I wrote his name in a notebook I kept folded in my breast pocket. I still have that notebook. The names outnumber my medals. In the Navy, I learned the weight of silence. Not the kind that dims you, but the kind that hardens you, that teaches you to lead by action, not volume. To speak only when your words carry ballast. Years passed. I earned rank slowly, scar by scar, stripe by stripe. Lieutenant, then lieutenant commander, then captain. By then, respect didn't surprise me anymore. But it still made something in me ache, the part that had wanted so badly to be seen. Once, just once, by him. I hadn't been home in nearly 8 years when the wedding invitation came. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, formal, the kind of paper that expects RSVP regrets from important people. It was Tyler's wedding. Of course it was. I set it on the table, stared at it like it might start talking. The handwriting on the front was Mom's. The note inside was from Corinne. "Hope you can make it. Tyler would love to see you." There was no mention of Dad. There never was. Not directly. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't even sure I wanted to go. I'd missed holidays, birthdays, even Mom's knee surgery last spring. Not because I didn't care, but because I couldn't stand to sit at that kitchen table and hear Dad tell stories that flattened me into a footnote. Every call with him still ended the same. "You still over there when you getting a real job?" Reagan. He said it like I was on some extended gap year, not a naval officer with 2 deployments behind her and command on the horizon. Part of me wanted to skip it, stay on base, let the past stay buried where it belonged. But another part, the same one that ran through our neighborhood streets under a pale moon at 16, knew this was the moment I'd been training for all along. Not the wedding, exactly, but the chance to face that room, those faces, with nothing left to explain. I didn't plan some big entrance. I didn't pack my dress whites. I brought a navy blue cocktail dress, simple heels, and my silence, the kind I'd earned, the kind that could split a man in half if timed right. I told myself it wasn't about revenge, that I'd show up, clap when they kissed, eat my brisket, say congratulations, and leave before anyone got the chance to ask too many questions. I even practiced my smile in the mirror of the hotel bathroom the night before. It looked real enough, but deep down, I think I knew. There are moments you don't chase, but when they come, you have to be ready to stand still and let the truth finally catch up. The church hall smelled like barbecue and buttercream. Fairy lights swayed overhead, casting warm shadows across rented tablecloths and centerpieces made of mason jars and baby's breath. It was exactly the kind of wedding our town loved: sweet tea in glass dispensers, a DJ playing Garth Brooks, neighbors hugging like it had been years. I kept to myself near the back, a quiet smile, a half-empty glass of wine. Tyler was glowing, slapping backs, flashing that quarterback grin that had carried him through high school and right into his father's business. Corinne hovered nearby, perfect as always, her new in-laws eating up every syllable. Dad was in rare form: red tie, wide stance, a man who still thought he could command the room just by standing in it. And when he tapped his spoon against the wine glass, I knew. He didn't start with me. He toasted Tyler first, of course, calling him my right-hand man, the one who always made me proud. Then Corinne Smart, beautiful, married into a good family. What more could a father ask for? Then the pause, the shift, that awful stage-light silence. And this one, he said, turning toward me with the same grin I'd seen 1,000 times, the one that always came just before the jab. Reagan. Bless her heart. I felt the words before I heard them, like cold water spilled down my back. She's still trying to figure it out. Folks, our little explorer. No husband, no plan, but hey, she showed up, that's progress. Laughter spilled like warm beer. Easy, familiar, comfortable for everyone but me. I didn't move. Just set my wine glass down gently so it wouldn't slip. Let my jaw relax. My spine straightened like it had so many times before on deck under pressure. And then, from near the cake table, a voice cut through the noise. "Wait," the man said. His tone wasn't loud, but it was enough. Enough to still forks, to tilt heads. He was in dress whites. Shoulders square, ribbons neat. He wasn't looking at my father. He was looking at me. And he looked like he knew exactly who I was. The room didn't fall silent all at once. It tipped, like a boat shifting under new weight. A few chuckles lingered, nervous, trailing off, as the man in whites took a step forward. His eyes stayed locked on mine. Recognition wasn't loud, but it echoed in his face like a name finally remembered. "Isn't she Admiral Foster?" The question didn't shout. It didn't need to. It landed like thunder in a clear sky. A fork clinked onto a plate. The organist froze mid-pack. Someone near the back whispered, "Wait, what did he say?" Dad laughed. "Too late? Too forcefully?" "Admiral, that's a bit generous. Son, Reagan's just—" He looked at me then. Really looked. The color began to drain from his face. His hand trembled slightly as he raised his glass for another sip and missed. Red wine sprayed across the tablecloth, staining the cornflowers like blood blooming into linen. I stood. The chair scraped softly behind me, my dress smoothed under my palms like calm water. My voice was low but steady. "Yes," I said, "I am." It was all I needed to say. The man in white straightened. A beat passed. Then he brought 2 fingers to his brow and saluted. "Admiral on deck." His voice didn't rise, but it carried, as if the air itself recognized rank, one by one. Others followed older men first, rising with care, knees stiff but backs proud. Then younger ones, not all in uniform, but standing straighter anyway, finding the line in their own way. A murmur swept through the hall like a tide shifting. My father didn't move. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked at me like he was trying to find the girl he used to joke about and couldn't. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I stood still and let the silence speak. Because this wasn't a performance. It was a correction. The salute ended. Hands dropped in unison, sharper than any applause I'd ever heard. A stillness settled over the room, not awkward, not confused, reverent. A quiet too thick for jokes, too clear for denial. Someone near the front whispered, "Oh my God." "She really is." Another murmured, "That's Admiral Foster." My sister's bouquet drooped slightly in her hand. My brother's smile faltered. And my father, he just sat there, blinking at a tablecloth he no longer controlled. For the first time in my life, no one was laughing. I didn't need a speech. I didn't need to explain the stripes I'd earned, the names I carried, the miles of ocean and combat that had shaped me. They were all written into my posture, my silence, the way I stood without apology. Dad cleared his throat. "We're making too big a deal of this," he said, voice thin. "Come on. It was just a joke. You all know how we tease in this family." No one joined in. Even Tyler looked away. "It wasn't a joke," I said, finally breaking the silence. My voice quiet but deliberate. It never was. His eyes flicked to mine, still searching. Maybe for a way back into the story he'd been telling for decades. The one where I was harmless, laughable, the underachiever who never quite got it right. "You should have told us," he said. There was no anger in it, only disbelief. A man realizing the room had shifted and no longer revolved around him. "All those years," I replied. "I did tell you, just not in the language you were listening for." The man in white stepped closer, still at attention. "Ma'am," he asked, permission to offer proper honors. He didn't say it out of tradition. He said it out of respect, out of understanding that something sacred had cracked open in that room, and it deserved to be seen through. I gave him a slight nod. "Keep it simple." He nodded back and turned, with measured grace. He raised 2 fingers to his temple once more, and this time, the salutes came not from obligation, but from something earned, something acknowledged, something undeniable. My father didn't stand, but the story did, and it no longer belonged to him. I didn't stay much longer after that. I offered a quiet congratulations to my brother and his new wife, a soft thank you to my sister, who could barely meet my eyes. Then I turned to leave. No grand exit, no need. As I stepped outside, the summer night wrapped around me thick with humidity and the hum of crickets. Porch lights cast long shadows across the gravel lot. The church doors creaked behind me, and voices spilled out in hushed waves. I didn't turn back. At the foot of the steps, more uniforms waited. Some faces I knew from deployments, others I didn't. But all stood with the same quiet dignity that the Navy teaches you respect without spectacle. Loyalty without condition. They'd come without being asked. "Admiral on deck." One of them said again, softer this time. And I returned the salute, not for me, but for everything it took to reach that moment. Behind me. I knew my father was still standing at the threshold, glass forgotten in his hand. No words left to spin. He had lived his whole life commanding rooms with jokes and certainty. But now, he faced something he couldn't talk his way out of. He called me a screw-up. The world called me Admiral, and I didn't need to explain the difference. As I reached my car, I looked once more at the glowing windows of the hall. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something quieter, something steadier, not victory, exactly, but peace. Not because I had proven him wrong, but because I had proven myself right, and that was enough. Sometimes revenge doesn't roar. Sometimes it walks out of a room, head high, heels clicking against concrete, and leaves silence in its place. the kind of silence that cannot be undone.